Okay, it's time for a little bit of American imperialism and our nation becoming a world power. What we're going to see by this point in American history, with the frontier being closed, is America's going to start to look out, which is exactly outward rather, which is exactly what other European countries are doing at that time. And so we're going to see what America's version of this looks like. Right. So we're going to start off here with a question. It says, what factors in America's past help nurture an environment of overseas expansion? And that's going to be interesting knowing that where we came from as a group that broke away from its own empire, but there are going to be some factors that nurture this overseas expansion. And one of the first precedents is going to be this idea of manifest destiny as exemplified by this particular painting right here, which is one of my favorites with all the things that Lady Liberty's bringing with her. She's carrying that telegraph wire in, followed by the railroad, chasing off Native Americans, chasing off buffalo, chasing off a big old grizzly bear down here at the bottom left. But this idea of manifest destiny shows that America will spread as far as we can spread. The only problem has been, well, the Pacific Ocean's in the way. So there's nothing left to, and, haven't spread to Canada or taken all of Mexico, but have taken a huge swath of this continent and are actively looking in other directions to see where else we might be able to chip away at. And so when you look at this map, the original, United States was basically to that Mississippi River with some that little bit of area up there in northern Minnesota, North Dakota being kind of weird, but that's okay. But you see that, then you see the Louisiana Purchase, Texas annexation, Oregon Territory, Mexican cession. You see the Gadsden Purchase. All of this business right here, America has consistently moved. Oh, not to Freedom now, but sorry, forgot about Florida down at the bottom. Forgot about all that one. But you see this consistent westward movement, but boom, you bump into the Pacific Ocean, there's nothing left. And not, again, can't really go up north, can't really go down south. So what are we going to do? So you see there is definitely precedent for this in America. Then in the late 1860s, old William Seward there, the hatchet-faced Seward, somebody once called him one time, in his purchase of Alaska, and they called it Seward's Folly, like there's nothing there. Well, little did they know there was a bunch of gold and oil there, but whatever. Again, that takes us outside the bounds of what we call the continental United States. So we not only will we expand westward, we will go in this instance, through Canada or across an ocean there in order to add territory that's eventually going to become a state here in the mid 20th century. And then, as we saw last week in 1890, there's the picture of Frederick Jackson Turner I wanted to show you. But in 1890, the frontier closes, and that safety valve for population and economic distress is removed. So we don't have, there's nowhere left to go as those western states are filling in. So the question becomes, where would be the new frontier? Interestingly enough, the original TV show Star Trek was about the Western frontier, believe it or not. The original name of the show was called Wagon Train to the Stars. It was like an extension of this. And I know that's weird and probably not what you were expecting to see on this lecture, but hey, it is what it is. So now the frontier's closed. There is no more safety valve. We've got to find somewhere else to go. And we have a history of this thing snaking across this continent. So where is it going to be? So, in conclusion, like I said, America starts its life as a city upon a hill. This idea of we're going to spread all these great and good things, and we'll spread them as far as we can spread them. And that seems to have been borne out, according to America at least, in this concept of manifest destiny. We want to spread those virtues of our society. We're definitely an acquisitive culture, meaning we want to gather up things. It's the idea that God has manifestly destined us to do it, and the economic climate and technological developments dictate we're going to have to look outside of the boundaries that we normally see. And that's what the rest of Europe is doing, so that's what America is going to end up doing as well. So this one here's titled America Looks, and behind my head it says Abroad. And the question is, why does a nation born by breaking free from an empire begin the process of gathering its own that we have not totally divested ourselves of even to this day? So there's three big things. And why in the 19th century there are three major groups looking to extend the reach abroad. Number one is Christian missionaries. Today they're still doing it, in a different fashion. Big business, always looking for cheap labor and cheap resources, and imperialists who believe that there is some great manifest irrevocable reason for having an empire that is worldwide. So you get those three together and working working toward the same purpose, and you set the stage for expansion. So we talk about Christianizing the heathen. That's why I wanted to title this, because there is a group that is definitely what they're trying to do, and that they're focusing on the Far East, over in Asia. And so it's our Christian duty to bring civilization to these backward people. At least that's what they're going to call them. If we bring Christianity, Christianity will bring civilization. And if you look at it from a big 35,000 foot point of view of history, you will see that they may have an argument there, though we're not going to give that a lot of credence today. But back then, you look at it, from the fall of the Roman Empire forward. It's like going civilization follows Christianity, and you can see that in Rudyard Kipling's famous poem, "The White Man's Burden." And this is the same guy who did The Jungle Book. And once you read White Man's Burden, The Jungle Book is not a fun little Disney film anymore. It is basically an argument for imperialism. I mean, Kipling, and that's one of the documents for this week that are linked in the week 3 folder. He said, "Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness on flutter folk and wild, your new caught sullen peoples, half devil and half child." And it keeps going, and it gets worse. But it's the idea that if we bring Christianity, civilization is going to follow. Who brings Christianity? Quote, the white man. That's the idea of the time. Great imagery of this, from the Far East. You see the people bringing the cross down in the far right, or you see missionaries in the top left coming and bringing that civilization to these supposedly backward people. Also, we got to make the economy hum. The economy boomed in that last half of the 19th century. And so after 1880, we're exporting things hand over fist. You look at American tobacco. Part of it, settled right in the North Carolina, what we call the Triad today. A lot of it there. American tobacco sold 1 billion cigarettes to China. If you made 1 cent off a cigarette, which that probably was not the profit at the time, but think about it. It's a lot of money. Okay, there's a lot of money over there. If you've got hundreds of millions of Chinese, you can sell them things. And so they sold 1 billion cigarettes in 1 year. If that market's untapped, there's going to be more untapped markets. We just have to find them. Okay, we've got to get a hold of them. And if we get there at the right time, we can monopolize these cheap resources. Things like, when oil becomes a big deal, down in that South Pacific, there are untapped oil reserves. Who's going to control them? Okay, and again, we come back to Frederick Jackson Turner and his significance of the frontier in American history. We know that is the essence of America, is finding that new frontier and taking all the things from it that we need as a country. So we're going to make the economy hum by not only exporting, but also getting a hold of cheap resources. You will see that come December the 7th, 1941. This idea of who's going to control these natural resources is going to bring us into conflict with the Japanese. Take a look at this particular graph here. You look at American investments abroad, and all of a sudden that's a lot of money in 1869, but comparatively speaking, you look at 1908, we got like 2.5 trillion sitting right there, and all of a sudden, what you're looking at is that 2.5 billion. I don't do the math very well, but you see, the reason for the chart is to see the stark difference. By 1908, a huge portion of the American economy is an investment residing outside of the borders of the United States. Again, Frederick Jackson Turner somewhere would be very happy. And now you look at this particular economic graph, you look at imports in red and exports in blue, and you notice by the time of this imperialist era, when America kicks it off, in the 1890s and beyond, you watch both imports and exports shoot through the roof. So part of this is going to be, who are these imperialists that we're talking about? Industrialists make sense. Christian missionaries make sense. But there's a group that thinks that America should be an imperial country, just like Great Britain, France, Germany, and Russia. America is an economic and industrial powerhouse at this time. And these countries right here are starting to divide up areas of the world to make them their own little protective or captive markets and whatnot. So a naval officer by the name of Alfred Thayer Mahan is going to write this incredible book called The Influence of Sea Power Upon History. And you look, he wrote it in 1890. It is going to be such an influential work that the German Kaiser is going to make sure that there is a copy on every ship in the German fleet. Now, what is in here that makes it so revolutionary? You hear vestiges of this to this day in America's basically cold conflict with China. And the first is this big Navy policy. It says, you know what? America borders two oceans and we have to have a Navy in each. And if we don't, we're going to be in trouble because the great powers of the day have always controlled the ocean. The greatest Navy at the time of his writing was the British Navy. And he wanted America to be in that particular mold. And by 1942, Great Britain's no longer going to be the most powerful Navy in the world. It's going to be the American Navy. But so Alfred Thayer Mahan would see well, I don't know that he would see, but the fruits of his ideas would come in about the middle of World War II. And so what happens is places like Pago Pago, I can't find that on the map if you made me, but Samoa and Pearl Harbor, I think we all know where those are. Those become bases for ships that are fired by coal. So you have to have places for them to refuel and replenish. Okay, and then so we've got that, so the American Navy can spread far and wide. Then there's this concept of jingoism, or this extreme nationalism, which America's going to go where it goes and does what it does. Or if you look at the next bullet, that war and imperialism are attempted like a frontier-like masculinity. There are no more Native Americans to subdue, so let's subdue Filipinos. Let's subdue people on Samoa. Let's subdue people in the continent of Africa. That's where those imperialists bring that from, but it's all designed to bring America and create an empire that is on par with the rest of Europe. Which you bring the social Darwinist piece from last week back into focus. And you look at this mess right here and you see there is perversions of science used to create this idea that the Anglo-Saxon or white race is going to be superior to everybody. You see the picture of Teddy Roosevelt down there at the bottom carrying a native that is, I mean, you could not even put that in a magazine today, carrying him up the hill to the schoolhouse, supposedly to civilize him, or the hierarchy of race on the next page. This is the kind of stuff that's getting passed around as scientific fact and as defense of going out and doing these things. Hey, we're trying to make the world a better place, as opposed to, oh my goodness, we're just trying to subjugate people. And so if you study this map closely, and you can stop this and do it, or you can download the PDF of the PowerPoint, and notice what's happened. Places that are getting colonized and divided up are not places with a whole lot of white people. They are places that have people, what we would call today, of color, but whose civilizations are not as advanced in terms of their military, their economy, or their politics, and make them ripe pickings for countries heck bent on going out and taking over and converting them into parts of their empire. Now, of course, in the the later half of the 20th century, this is all going to go away to a great degree, but just prior to the turn of the 20th century, you can see how the world was divided up. Which finishes this piece up in this idea that America has a finite market. Okay, I don't think I used that term earlier, and I really should have. But America has a finite market, which means it can only grow so much as the population slowly grows and expands. So we have to look outward as places to get materials and as places to sell. And then you don't want to be left out. Usually in the classroom, I'd say, hey, if I took a big old trash bag, filled it up with money, threw it on the floor, said, y'all go get it. There's going to be a race and a fist fight, see who gets the money, right? That's what's going on here. This is that same sort of race on a much larger and a much more international scale. And American businesses, they start to become multinational. You're going to see some interesting pieces in the next lecture, but our economy is tied to our foreign policy, not just to our domestic policy had been the case. And you've got Great Britain, who's going to become America's strongest ally at this particular time, in Germany, who we're going to fight twice in the next 50 years, inching closer and closer, and providing that competition.